on TikTok as well. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. And if you're going to say anything negative, don't bother. It's all right. I'm just talking to TikTok and Instagram.
No, it's fine. I'll let you finish.
We're running live on all these different channels. So we're streaming live on probably about 10 different channels on all different mediums: LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. So we're on all these channels right now to talk about this journey. Now, the reason that I share this journey, and this is quite important, I'm actually watching Diary of a CEO this morning. It's important to share what you've actually learned and not waste your life. Writing books leaves experience and wisdom for the next generation. And that's not my words. That is the words of Richard Branson in the Diary of a CEO this morning when I watched it. And I'll tell you what, it blew my mind, Richard. It's like, this is about my journey of how I made my first million.
So could you just clarify, Jim, what is Diary of a CEO?
Well, Diary of a CEO, Steve Bartlett from Dragon's Den. So Steve Bartlett built a huge multimedia empire, and then he sold it for 300 million. But he's now got a podcast called Diary of a CEO. And I listen to these ones because it's got a lot of successful people in it. There's about 800,000 followers now. I remember starting when it was about 10,000. But the more followers that get on the Diary of a CEO on YouTube, the bigger guests he'll have. And there's no surprise. He said the ultimate for me, Steve Bartlett said this, is actually the ultimate for Diary of a CEO is actually getting Richard Branson on it, and actually sitting with Richard Branson, because he's a huge inspiration on a lot of entrepreneurs. Me especially, hi Celeste, me especially, a huge influence. I remember I used to watch Richard Branson, or I used to read about Richard Branson in the business section. I think it's Piers Morgan actually wrote it for The Sun, and this was in the 1980s, in the mid 1980s. And I just used to sit in awe of people like Richard Branson, like Tiny Rowland of the Lawnrow Group, Richard Branson of, Alan Sugar of Amstrad at the time, and Ralph Harpin of the Burton Group. Ralph was a bit of a philanderer, though. He got in trouble with me to kind of let what we talk about in the books that we're going, and which is, what was the one? It was Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich, yeah.
Think and Grow Rich actually talks about a great subject, and it is actually using your sex drive for the betterment of you and society. And I don't mean actually getting involved with anybody sexually.
I was just going to say, you better clarify on that.
Yeah. It's just exactly the same as what a footballer does or an athlete does in the run up to them actually the World Cup or the run up to their Olympics. They don't get involved in anything like that at all, because they build up all that momentum.
Channel that energy.
In the right direction. And that's why it's so important. But Think and Grow Rich actually talks about that. As an interview with about 25 of the most successful people in the world at that point in time. Andrew Carnegie was one of them, who was worth 300 million. That sounds a lot of money today, in 1928.
It's a lot of money back then.
That's huge. That's why you've got the Carnegie Foundation all around the world. But these are all people I take inspiration from and actually learn from as well. And even if there's a wee bit of information you could pick up from all these different people, then it all adds up to your matrix, if that makes sense, to your world. It drives you forward in the direction that you want to go. And that's how it's so important to actually keep learning all the time. One of the most important things we talked about last week, Richard, and I want to go in depth and a deep dive into this, because this is instrumental in anybody's success.
Yeah.
You will be where you are in the next 5 years and the years to come by the books you read, the people you associate with. It is so important. If you associate with people that are not going anywhere, guess what's going to happen to you? You're not going anywhere either, because it rubs off on you. Remember your mum used to say to you, don't go around with these people.
Fly with the crows.
It's going to rub off on you. Exactly. And you know, I know myself, because when I was younger, I talked about in part 1 and part 2 at school and how I got into trouble all the time. I was just in with the wrong crowd at that time. But that was another manifestation of everything I'd never dealt with throughout these years, because I had no one to help me through that process. And that's why mentoring is so important to everybody. Everybody, definitely. Yeah. A lot of people have mentors in their grandfather, their grandmother, or something like that, and they talk about it quite a lot. But it's so important that you actually use this for the right reasons. So mentors is key here. And there's a lot of mentors. I mean, I've had a lot of mentors over the year, but I never actually specifically paid to have someone come and mentor me. So specifically, I did when I was with the International Business Systems, which is the first introduction. Now, International Business Systems ran alongside the Amway business. So if anybody knows network marketing, now Amway sold soap powder, cleaning products. In America, they sold cars and petrol and credit cards and, you know, everything. And in Britain, it was a bit different. It had less of the products, but they sold all these goods and services. And you were basically a consultant, a personal shopping consultant for someone. But alongside that was a network that you grew. And the bigger your network got, kind of like Avon and all the rest of it, but the network that you grew. And what the founders at that time, Pat and Greta Gregory and Jerry and Mandy Scriven, actually realized from America is they said, if you put a business enterprise together of books, tapes, functions, and upline, you know, mentors, this will set you free. You will not need to be with somebody all the time. They didn't have anything like that. So it was literally handing out a book to someone and say, I think I know what your challenge is because I've discussed it with you. I think this is the right book for you to start reading right now to help you through that process. So that's what these people were. Now, these were people that had done it all before. They were at the level ahead of you, and you wanted to get where they were going. So it makes sense in life. If you want to get somewhere in life, you look for where you want to go and work that out. But you look for the most successful person in that area that you want to get to.
Yeah.
And all you need to do is learn from them.
Yeah.
Now,
sorry, on you go, Jim.
A lot of people say, well, why would these people tell you? Well, the great thing about network marketing is, unless they could only be successful if I was successful. So they had to help me become successful for them to become successful. And this is where I got first introduced to that sort of mechanism, that sort of thing. You're not out there to compete against anybody. You're out there to compete against yourself.
Yeah.
And that was totally foreign to me because I'd been indoctrinated all my life by my mother and her father, which was my grandfather, to actually be competitive against everybody, including your family members.
And your siblings and things, yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, you know, you'd give it to them, you know, just to get ahead.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a huge mindset shift. But this allowed me to do this in this process, and this is what will ultimately set everybody free if you do this for yourself. So it's finding these. So I'll tell you some of the mentors that I did speak to over the years. Tony Robbins was a big one for me. Tony Robbins I still listen to today now and again, but he was one of the early pioneers in this. It was a lot of people within the International Business Systems Network, but there was books by Notes from a Friend, for example, I first got introduced to from Tony Robbins. And the Notes from a Friend was Tony's first book that he wrote, actually, and he got it funded, and he had to get the money to buy it, to get it funded. You know, he had no money at that time. So Notes from a Friend was actually written by him, and people paid advertising in his book so he could actually self-fund it because he didn't have any money to make that book. But Notes from a Friend is absolutely fantastic book today, and you often get that from Tony Robbins actually for free if you go on their website, or you get introduced to it through an associate of Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins has got about like 150 companies.
He's got a lot going on.
He's got massive. And how do you generate and how do you run that organization? It is mentors, books, podcasts, and functions. That's how you do it. That's how you keep all these people going in that system. That's how important it was to the International Business System. So this is when I first got introduced to it and actually realized. Now, to be honest, when I left school, I had the opinion when I first met my mentors was, when I left school, I'd never read another book again. Genuinely, when they said, read The Magic of Thinking Big. I was like, no, I'm not reading another book ever again. Would you read it for £1 million? Absolutely, give me the book.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, I didn't believe I could get £1 million, to be honest. But over a period of time of reading these books, I then had the belief that at some point in time, yes, I could be a millionaire. But it was these books that actually gave me that inspiration. If I didn't have the books, I would be exactly where I am right now. That's the reality. So books are so important. You were going to ask a question, Richard.
I was going to just point out, obviously, just on the topic of mentors and books and things, we've got a few comments coming in. Darren says, getting a good mentor is key. We have a mentor who's extremely successful, and he said it's all about adjusting the current mindset to the millionaire mindset, which is...
absolutely.
Yeah, and Celeste said there, obviously, she reads a lot of Abraham Hicks, Mike Dooley, Wayne Dyer, Gay Hendricks, and Richard Wiseman and the likes. So, yeah, you can see, and then that's right, guys, mentors and books.
Here's a classic example. I have no idea who these people are, Celeste actually said. But I tell you what, they'll be completely relevant to what she's doing right now.
I think, I'm just putting up there.
Yeah,
Richard. I've heard of Richard Wiseman, probably because I've got the same first name. But
you know, so see how important it is, and how certain people you resonate to. Just because you don't resonate to one, this is what I was told about listening to podcasts, and this is really important. The most important thing is ever, if you don't relate to a book, or you don't relate to a person in a podcast or a show, if you don't relate to me, go and listen to somebody else in property investment or in this sort of wealth creation area, because there's a pattern of there's a set of patterns in this every single time, and it's the same for everybody. And I'll talk about that right now, actually. I sat and watched the Diary of a CEO, Richard Branson, this morning. I tell you what, it's like, oh my God, I could not believe how I was following the same patterns right now as Richard Branson followed. It's the same patterns and everything. It's the same mentality. It's the building belief in yourself. It's getting comfortable with selling. It's for him, it was like, one of the things that really resonated to me, we talked about it the other week, was he said at school he could never work out why he needed to learn something. And that's what really switched him off. And it's like, we talked about that the other week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
I was like, hallelujah. It's like, I think like him.
It's relatable then as well.
So that's the sort of thing we saw here. Another thing that really gave me hope is he was very inquisitive. This is key here, to be inquisitive about everything. So in other words, he loves learning about new things, and that's what I do as well. I just love learning about new things. I love learning about something that will further what I'm wanting to achieve or what I'm wanting to do out throughout this process. That's key in terms of how I'm doing it. So he loves that. Do you know the most important thing is you get all these people out there saying about public speaking and how important it is for you in public speaking to stop going, do you know all the way through it? He did that all the way through his interview. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's a billionaire. And it's like everybody's on the tip of the, under tenterhooks listening to everything he's got to say. And he doesn't talk eloquently at all, really, in terms of how he delivers anything. And it proves to me beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's, if you're receptive enough to understand the message rather than the person that's conveying it, you will learn something out of everything that you watch or listen to. That's the most important thing. There's all these critics out there, but I'll tell you, a statue was never erected to a critic, were they?
No.
You never see statues erected to critics, do you? Never. Because that's all they ever do, is criticize other people. You don't need these people in your life. Get rid of them. And I mean get rid of them. Run as far away as possible from these people. Stay away from them. Yeah, you could be friends with them on Facebook, but just unfollow them. And they're really bad and they jump on at every single thing that you do and criticize you. Get rid of them completely. Unfriend them. You don't need them in your life. You maybe think you do. And I'm not caring if it's your mum or dad. It's just, I mean, I've had people in the past, I know people who have actually gone to their mum and dad and says, Mum, Dad, I love you very much, but you're just far too negative for my mindset. And you give me neg all the time and it's affecting me and I just have to get out of this. So I love you a bit, but I just didn't want to hear it from you anymore. So I'm not coming down to the house anymore. I've seen people do that who have gone on to be major successful. Now, you've got to decide for yourself, because a lot of people out there will think to themselves, oh, that I could never do that to my mum and dad, but I'm not asking you to do it. I'm just saying it's a suggestion. Keith Cunningham, who Rich Dad was all written about in the first place, Robert Kiyosaki's book, Keith Cunningham was Rich Dad. Keith Cunningham said to me one day, I mean, I met Keith and everything like that. We spent the weekend together with a group of people in Paris at one point. See the degrees I'll go and the efforts I'll go to actually learn from people far more successful than me. It's paying a price. This is what it's all about. So Keith Cunningham once said to, used to say on stage, and he famously says it all the time anyway in all his blogs, he says, it's only my opinion. You don't need to listen to me. It's just my opinion. But I might know something because of where I am. But it's entirely up to you whether you listen to me or not. And I say the same thing to everybody out there as well. You don't need to listen to me. Switch off, jog on. It doesn't make any difference to where I'm going and what I'm doing. It's just all I'm doing is imparting my knowledge and my expertise of what I've learned before and the arenas I've learned before. And I really mean arenas, because sometimes it's a battle uphill in your mind, in order to help other people go forward. That's the only reason I'm doing this, especially for my children, and my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren, and my great-great-grandchildren. And when I'm dead and gone, hopefully some of them will still be watching and listening to this.
Yeah.
All these years, this is a bank of knowledge I'm building up, which will pass on to generations to come. And just so happens, we're sharing it at the same time, because I kind of think it's great. And I love the conversations that we have back and forward.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you said before, you get quite a lot out of this. And
yeah,
it's
definitely.
Great. It's great that I'm helping you as well. And then I know Perry gets a lot and Jimmy gets a lot and everybody else gets a lot within our organization. And that's all I ever wanted to do. I just wanted other people to be successful. And I really genuinely want other people to be more successful than me. That's what it is. Do you? And this is a key here. This is how you know who you are as a person. When someone loses the jackpot on a game show, do you jump for joy that they've lost?
No, I always feel bad for them.
Or do you feel really commiserate?
Yeah.
That's the important thing. If you jump for joy, you're not in the right mindset.
No.
You're definitely not in the right mindset.
No, that's good to be able to see and help people succeed. Yeah.
As my mentors used to say, Richard, you've got stinking thinking.
Yeah.
And that's effectively, you need to change it. Or when you see someone in a game show or in anything in life, are you rooting for them? And you've got their back at every opportunity and you help them as much as possible. That is the type of person you should become. And that is the type of person you really want to become, because that is what will set you free, because you are aligning with your true beliefs deep down within your core about who you are as a person. And because you align with your true beliefs about deep down about who you are in your core, and you're following your passion, so to speak, you will be relaxed, in a state of relaxation. You will have less stress in your life, and you'll have less turmoil within yourself with this battle that goes on in your head, because you're now aligning with your beliefs. Who would have known it? We've got a chimp. We think like chimps. It's like, see, this is the one. Everybody's been talking about the chimp paradox.
Yeah.
Now, it's all right. I'm not promoting this book to make money. You can go on that link, by the way, to the one I've got. No, it's not. But the chimp paradox is a really good one. Everybody talks about this. And who would have known you've got a chimp part of your brain, which is the emotional side, which is 6 times stronger than the human part of your brain, which is the logic and fact side. And who would have known you've got the gremlins and the goblins, which influence that. And then you've also got the computer it feeds into, which actually runs it overall. But it's understanding in the books that you read that mentality and understanding how that works within yourself, which will set you free within your mind and will let you move on and build things bigger and better than you want to. And I always said at the beginning, it's Monte Carlo or bust for me.
I remember you used to say that, yeah.
If I was not a millionaire by the time I retired at 65 years old, this was my plan. I had no pension and I had no intention of getting a pension. I deserved everything I got. I deserved the poverty if I wasn't a millionaire by the time I retired at 65. I burnt my bridges and burnt my boats. That was it, done. The Viking story resonates with me a very, very lot. And again, this is all in books. And it was all taught by my mentors. The Vikings used to win every single battle they went into. Even though the Vikings were about 100 or maybe 200 people, it appeared on the shores of Scotland, of England, of France, of any other region. The Vikings used to roll up in their longboats. They used to, 200 of them used to decant off the boats. They used to get onto the shore. They used to turn around and they used to burn their boats. And one of the Vikings one day asked their leader, why are we burning the boats? And he says, because you'll either succeed against all the odds or we'll die trying. And that, for me, resonated completely throughout that. But see how that story, if I never knew that story, I would never have learned that strategy in my mind.
Yeah.
That's one of the most important things ever in my mind. It's all or nothing. It is literally Monte Carlo or bust. It's the old thing about, let's get in the car and let's start driving. And I don't care what's going to happen on the way. I'm getting to Monte Carlo. And that's the sort of thing, that's the attitude I had when I was for retirement at 65 as a millionaire. I do not know I do know what accelerated the growth was the effort that I put in. It's what would you give for your dream? What would you give for the thing that you want the most, that you really desire? How much would you spend? What would you invest? What time would you put into it? If I guaranteed you out there that you could have everything you ever wanted, your heart's desire, if I guaranteed that could happen, what would you pay for that? What would you give for that? And this isn't a sales, by the way. We're not selling a course, by the way.
Yeah.
What would you do for that? And that's the sort of mentality I had. And that's what I was told by my mentors when they sat down with me. This was Bernard D'Souza, actually. And Tom McFadden is no longer here. He died of cancer. But Tom was instrumental. And I was introduced to Tom through Anthony Craig, who's now the councillor in Glenrothes. But Tom used to sit me down and say, what would you give to have your heart's desire? And hey, tell me what to do. All I did, Tom, flipping it. Tom, tell me what to do. Get him by the collar and tell me what to do, Tom. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And he used to go, you just have to do it. You just have to do it. You just have to get out there and do it. And I went, do what? Do what? Pick up the phone. Oh, shit. I've got to pick up the phone. I've got to speak to people. Oh, no.
I was just going to say that.
He says, let's go back to what you really want. And this is where he started to build the dream every time. Because what's happening here is you've got your obstacle right here. There's your obstacle right here, right? And what most people do with their obstacle is they build their dream to there. Okay? Now they can see their dream in the beginning like that. So here's my dream right here. And you can see it when you're looking across here. But what happens is when you need to pick up the phone and speak to people, your obstacle gets bigger. You need to go to the other end of the country. You get in a car and drive 700 miles to show somebody this business plan. Oh, obstacle goes a bit higher. Notice how your dreams just disappeared. Yeah, that's what happens. People can't see the dream anymore. So you have to make sure you've got a dream. It'll blow you right out of the water. You'll resonate and you'll keep an eye on every single day. This is what books, this is what podcasts, this is what mentors, this is what functions actually give you that juice, that mentality, that thinking. Now, the thing about books, tapes, and functions and mentors is they will give you what we call external motivation. So if you're out there, have you ever noticed once you go to these functions? Now, classic example, you go to the property functions, and then you come away with a buzz because you've been in the room beside other people around all about you. We're all thinking in the same direction. You come away with a buzz and you're on cloud nine and you think, I could conquer the world. I'm going to be a millionaire. This time next year we'll be a millionaire, Del Boy. It's like that sort of attitude. You come away with a huge external motivation, we call it.
Yeah.
And what happens is somebody says, you'll never do that. And it drops.
Brings you down, yeah.
Oh, what makes you think you're so special? And it drops. And 3 days later, you're back to square one. You've lost it because the function's actually giving you that. What you have to learn to do, and this is why books and podcasts and mentors and functions are so important to plug into, is you have to keep that topped up every single time. Internal motivation.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your goals and dreams that you focus on has to pull you to there. I have a very fantastic phrase that I'll use all the time. You'll either be pushed by your circumstances or pulled by your dreams. If you've not got one or the other, you will do nothing else in life. You will stay exactly where you are right now. And if you don't like where you are right now, you're going to have to get motivated. You're going to have to get a motive for action. That's motivation. Motivation. Motive for action. That's what it's all about. So you have to find that dream. You have to find that purpose. You have to find where you're going. And it doesn't need to be, oh, I've got to have it perfect before I start that journey. It's like, to hell with it. Just focus on anything possible. The one thing I'm doing right now, Richard, is I've set up a catch and release program in Jamaica. I have no idea why I did that. I just felt that I needed to do that. I was compelled to do that. It's something I need to do in my core and not allow all these cats to suffer and eventually die agonizing deaths. So I made sandals do that. I literally made them. I hung them by their tongue on video and actually put it online and broadcast it. But I agreed to give them a contribution towards that catch and release program on the Sandals Resort in Jamaica. I am about to do the same here in Spain, where I live in my house. I'm not permanently in Spain, by the way, in my second home, over in the Spain area. So I'm about to do that as well. And I've just spoken to Alethea, who actually furnished my house 20 years ago, which was great. So she actually runs the whole thing. And she's been talking to the town council. Now, the town council has screwed them and taken 13,000 euros off them when they were meant to have that for their catch and release program. So I'm now going to help her put pressure on them. Why am I doing this? I don't know. But within my core, I think it's right to do.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't know. I might be on a program with Joanna Lumley someday.
The thing is, though, with things like that, you're obviously doing that because, like you say, it's something inside you that you feel that that's what you need to do, and that's fine. What I was going to ask you is, obviously, there's a lot of influential people. Just back to like mentors and books and everything. Sorry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of influential people. There's a lot of events and books and podcasts, and there is so much out there. How did you know, or how could people maybe work out what is maybe the best people to listen to or the best things to take on board and implement? And how did you differentiate, that's no for me, or I could use this and that could help me?
I listen to the people that I trusted.
Right.
And the people that I trust are people like Tony Robbins, Steve Bartlett. I do my research on everybody beforehand. By the way, Mark, on Instagram, Mark Driver, he's mentioned on Instagram, stuff like that. Not so much adopting the millionaire mindset, but it's crucial. And understanding what works for them. Millionaire mindset is too broad of a term. Absolutely, Mark. I agree with that completely. It's actually narrowing it down for you as a person, but still remain broad. If you don't know what your purpose is in life right now, it doesn't matter. Don't. Congratulations. Either do I. Because it's not appeared yet, and I have no idea. If I knew what my purpose was, I'd be ready just to die. There would be no point. It's like I've got there. It's like, why would I want to do that?
So it's a continual journey,
but what you have to have is great belief and faith in yourself that if you keep doing what you're doing and whatever you enjoy, right, it will take you to that. It will take you to the purpose that you should be, your true purpose in life, where you should actually end up. That's where it will take you to. That's the most important thing. It's not about actually defining it right now and saying, oh, I'm going to work towards being an accountant and I'm going to be an accountant for the rest of my life. I'll guarantee you that'll no harm. Because I thought accountancy was going to set me free. And then by the time I got there, I went, holy shit, I'm never going to be a millionaire being an accountant.
I'm stuck doing this. No.
It's like, why did I not work that out? But at the time, I had accountancy way up here on the pedestal. But I'll be honest, I probably would have been, but I chose a different path. I didn't go down the PLC route, which is a public limited company. I didn't go down the tiny roll-in, the Alan Sugar the director path, sort of all these big PLCs. And I had that choice at that time. That was when I sat in an airport with Gordon Strang. Now, Gordon, I'm actually on LinkedIn with, but Gordon's no longer with the Bell Security. But that's when I sat in an airport with Gordon Strang, and he said, I want to offer you the job of the financial controller, and we will eventually make you financial director when we float Bell Security PLC. And they do all the securities worldwide for all the banks and everything like that. And he says, we'll float. And I was like, wow. It was like, holy shit, really? Now, at that time, it was just before I was 30. And I had actually had in my mind, I wanted to be a financial director before I was 30. And I had to really think about this for a long time. But because I'd read so many books and I had so much confidence in myself and my abilities, and I knew I'd find my way somehow, because of all the books and the upline and the sport and the functions and the podcasts and, well, tapes at that time. By the way, your car should be a mobile university. Every time you travel somewhere, you shouldn't be listening to the radio. You should be listening to a podcast. You should be listening to something. It will further your doing. It will further your being and what you want to achieve. You know, music's great, but as I think it was one of the great mentors actually said, music's just chewing gum for the mind. That's it. That's all it is. It makes you feel good. Yeah, it can be used on various occasions to pump you up when you really need it, and that's fine. But essentially, it's just chewing gum for the mind. It doesn't actually tell you anything. It doesn't do anything. It hypes you. Great, it makes you feel great about yourself, but it doesn't actually further your objectives.
Mm-hmm.
So your car should be a mobile university in every opportunity. I mean, even in the bath. I mean, I'm having a bath this morning, and I'm sitting in the bath. I'm watching Diary of a CEO at the time and listening to it, and then I'm walking about with the speaker. Oh, Bluetooth, brilliant! Eh? You just walk about. I've got a speaker that you just hang on the side of your dressing gown or whatever, and you just walk about with the speaker around the whole house, and you're sitting listening to this all the time and engaging with all this different information and having all that right information going in. Now, people could say, "Oh, wow, that's a bit intense." It's like, hey, try being poor. It's worse. Yeah. I've been there. It's like rating ashtrays for dopes so you can actually have a roll up because you can't afford cigarettes, and actually not being able to go out at night to a pub or anything like that on a Friday night because you can't even afford a pint. And actually hoping for happy hour and then going to happy hour at the discos and that and thinking I'll buy about 6 pints at once and that'll be me goosed. And then you'll have to sponge off everybody else for the rest of your night because you can't afford it.
Yeah, Mick's asking this will be shared as a podcast, Mick, once we're finished today, so you could listen to this part.
Yeah, you'll find it on Spotify as well, Mick.
Yeah,
and Anchor and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So the key here is all these different things. You know, I've tried poor. It's no great. I tell you what, you didn't want to do it. And then actually deciding if you could put the heating on or no, and then also actually we talked about before. It's like the luxury for me at that time, and Elaine and I, was steak sausages. That's all the luxury we had. Other than that, you're on Finder's crispy pancakes almost every day out of Iceland or farm foods or whatever it was at the time. Literally 2 for £1, 2 for 50 pence or something. The cheapest you could get, because that's all you could survive. I had a shit diet when I was skinny. I'll tell you. It's like no wonder. And I tell you what as well, that's a really important thing to do as well. Your diet actually affects your mind.
Oh yeah.
And this is why it's important to get our children eating. This is why Lynn Nourish, see, she runs a project in Kirkcaldy, Lynn, and she goes by Lynn Nourish if you look her up on Facebook. It's important, she actually impresses it as well, to feed the children before they go to school properly. They have to get the nutrition for their mind in order to make them think properly so they can educate themselves properly, so it can help them move forward. If you don't do that, you're setting your whole economy and your whole society up for failure because you're not educating the younger generation who will ultimately look after you. Mm-hmm. You're just setting yourself up for failure. Further down the line, look at all these countries that don't do that. They're suffering right now because they've got abject poverty. And it's either one end or the other. It's the super rich and it's the ultra poor. There's no in between. There's no middle class in these societies. You're either one or the other. You're no in between anymore. So this is why it's important to actually keep getting the right diet, getting the right information. This is why books will tell you all this and the things that you should be eating. So it's nourishing your mind that's what books are for, and that's what your mentor's for. Now, it's important. We've talked about books a lot. We've talked about podcasts. We've talked about learning from the right people. But it's most important, it's actually the right people. This is why I go right to the most successful people, and then I'll learn from them. So Steve Bartlett is a classic example. I know Steve Bartlett will never endorse someone who will damage my business and my future, because it's his reputation that's on the line, because he's made it already. I know Tony Robbins will never endorse somebody who will damage his reputation. So that's why I trust the things that come out of Tony Robbins. I know Richard Branson will never do anything in his books to damage anybody else, because it's his reputation. I don't know the gurus, the fake gurus, the people that are popping up from nowhere and saying, this is come on my course, come on my course, come on my course. And I have been on a couple of them lately, and I've actually stopped halfway through, because I've realized that I shouldn't be here, because the person is, for want of a better phrase, not aligning with my beliefs and my thought processes. So I won't take it any further. Even though I've paid for the whole course, I am not taking it any further. I am not letting you in my mind. I'm not letting you affect my thinking. I will learn a basic level from them. That's how, you can go to loads of free seminars, right? You get the free 1-day things, right? Go to them, learn something, and then don't do the upsell. Don't get dragged into it unless you're convinced it will put you forward. Don't sign up on the day. That's my best advice to these things. Wait 3 or 4 days, and don't believe the bullshit about, it's only available today, because the people trying to sell you that course at that time get a kickback for selling you that course on behalf of the person that's running the course.
We've done that a few times in the past, Jim. Went to things and just went for the day, and I mean, we learned something, but then no doing the upsell thing.
I went to Russ Whitney, who was the epitome of the gurus at the time from America. And that was my first introduction to a course for property. And I learned one thing on that free course. Now, the next course after the upsell was £2,000. They were wanting to sell me on an upsell. I didn't take the upsell, because I went with my pal to Edinburgh, Ian. I went with him. He took me because he says, Russ Whitney's actually doing something. They're from America, and they're a great course. And it's like, I went for the free course. And I tell you what, I learned one snippet of information that allowed me to put the foundations in place to where I am today. And that one snippet of information, and most people will know it now, is houses and flats for cash in the early 90s. I knew that. And I used to advertise in the papers, a wee lineage advert for £6 a week. Houses and flats for cash, call this number. That's it. And I used to have loads of people calling me on lead generation, and I used to filter them all out. I wish I had an estate agency at the time, because I could have got all them and sold them privately through the estate agency. Because I can't pay you that, pal. My numbers don't work at these figures. However, I'm quite prepared to pay that. Now, this was the classic example about, I actually had some of my friends come through that process, and I actually said, no. You'll not get, I can only pay you this amount, but I know you'll get more money from going to an estate agent, because I wasn't an estate agent at the time. I know you'll get more money going to an estate agent. So go to the estate agent and list with them. And they were making 2,000 or 3,000 more. But I tell you what, think about the reputation I built as a result of that, about the fact of doing that. I even had a woman in Burnt Island who wanted to sell me our shops for £80,000, 2 shops. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to buy your shops for 80 grand, because you can get at least 120 grand for these. Because I've just done due diligence with Graham and Sibbald, 2 doors down. They've sold theirs at the square footage or the square meterage. And when I multiply yours, it's about 120 grand. Now, I did have this agency at that time when I first started out in 2006. And I said to her, I'll tell you what I'll do. Because she was going, all right, okay, I've approached somebody else. Says, and they've agreed to pay me 80 grand. I went, no, for God's sake. Okay then, what I'll do, I said, because I didn't want to rip her off, because I felt it was immoral and wrong, but obviously the other person couldn't give a shit. And I said to her, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll guarantee you £80,000. I will buy them for 80 grand. But I want to put them on the market first. And if I sell them for more than the £80,000, you pay me 1.25 commission at that time. And I sold them for 125,000. Yeah. Is she my best pal? Absolutely. Was she one of my biggest loyal fans? Absolutely. Because I'm not there to take advantage of people. I'm there to help people on their journey. But if my numbers don't work, I can't do anything for them. So, it's based on what works for me. If it doesn't work for you, then fair enough. And if I think you could get more somewhere else, I'll tell you. We've done that anyway.
Yeah, of
We've
course.
done that loads of times when we go to see somebody. We'll tell them, I wouldn't sell your house because you'll never actually get as much to buy anywhere else that you're looking for, and it doesn't make sense. Actually, I would just adapt your house.
Yeah, and stay where you are. Yeah.
And I tell you what, I play the long game. I don't play this short-term profit thing. I'm not there to make money out of other people and take advantage of them. I am there to help them get to the next steps in their life. And if it just so happens to use me as a result for the services that I offer, then fantastic. It's a win-win for me. If they don't, and then it's allowed them to move on anyway, it doesn't matter, because I'll look on the principle that I'll still move on anyway. But it's only things like this that will teach you that. It teaches you only to compete with yourself and not, because a lot of people out there, think about this, you get this every single time. They say it every single time, don't they? You get people out there saying, I always help other people, but there's people always take advantage of you. So I've stopped helping other people for that reason. Hey, newsflash, it's always going to happen. And it's never
going to change.
It's happened to me loads of times. But do you know what? There's more people that will help you in return because you help them than there is the people that take advantage of you.
Yeah.
And you just have to suck it up. That's the reality. And if you don't do that, you will never get any further forward in life. If you live a life of doubt about everybody else and what their intentions are, you will never move any further forward. Because the only way you move further forward in life and actually have any success in everything, in anything, whatever it is by helping more people get to where they want to be. That's how your success in life is built on helping other people become successful. That's what it's down to. And this is why this will program you for that. But remember, all these books are written from extremely successful people in their fields, and it's the fields that you want to learn from in order to help you set yourself free. Don't be cynical. Do your due diligence and look into the people that you're going to learn from and look into what their motivations are for actually charging you money. And you have to weigh in your own mind about the cost benefit to that. Here's an accountant's term, cost benefit analysis. Is the benefit you're going to perceive or you're going to get more important? A classic example recently is I saw a guy, it's like, he's a friend of he's just friends on Facebook, but he looks like Oddbod Jr. from Carry On Screaming. If you know the
Carry On films, yeah.
It's like, that's what he looks like, genuinely. And I thought, nobody's going to buy any more for you, pal. And it's difficult to say that because I had somebody say that to me in the beginning and says, see facial hair, Jim, because I had a tash and a beard and everything like that. And I was like, hey, look at me, 70s porn star. And Bill O'Brien from Martin Marietta actually said to me, Martin Marietta was actually put the Viking probe on Mars.
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien was one of my mentors. He actually ran the Viking probe project. So, and I never got a chance to meet Bill, but it was tapes and functions. I saw Bill and all the rest of it. So he was one of the people that actually taught me all these different things. And Bill O'Brien actually said from stage one day or on a tape, he said, facial hair detracts from the speaker. Zoom. I couldn't have got that moustache off. Because it was like, Bill O'Brien's was a multi-millionaire, hugely successful in industry, and Martin Marietta and Viking probe on Mars and the project and everything like that. And I was like, holy shit, whatever comes out of your mouth, Bill, and tells me to do, I'm going to be doing. And it is paying that price. And what I would ask people out there is, how far would you actually travel to do a deal? So the furthest I've traveled to do a deal is I actually got in my car and went up to the Isle of Skye one day. Drove all the way up to the Isle of Skye just to show a business plan to someone. And they went, nah, it's no for me. And then I drove all the way back after staying overnight. All my time, all my effort, all my money, all the rest of it, away from my family. But for me, it's a huge lesson. Yeah. And it's not a lesson to qualify people. It's a lesson about doing what it takes. What are you prepared to do? If you're convinced in your own mind that you will be a millionaire one day, what would you do?
To get there,
How far would you go to do that? That's probably the most important thing I would say to people. If you convince yourself, and I used to say it to loads of people, one day I'll be a millionaire. And some people would go, Jim, I fully believe that you will be. Because holy shit, you've just got that drive. I don't know what it is. It's probably ADHD or something like that. But you've got that drive.
Yeah, you've got
that's what they used to say to me every single time. One day we think you'll be so successful, way beyond the future. Other people would say, Jim, you're talking shit.
Yeah, but some people might hear that story, like you'd seen you travelled up to Isle Guy. The guy was like, no for me, you turned around and drove back. And some people might look at that and think, that's a complete waste of your time. But you've obviously you've obviously used that and thought, right, I'm going to use this as a
university on the way up. I was listening to tapes all the way up there. So all the way I was learning, all the way up there for all these hours, all the way back I was listening to tapes. I went up to the Isle of Skye. I knew what it takes. I did what it takes. And then also follow up as well. How many times would I follow up? Every single time. Follow up. Do you know one of the biggest real estate agents in the world, Peter, who actually ran Century 21 in Canada, had the master franchise, multi-millionaire, has a book called Don't Ever Fight with a Pig.
I've got that.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got it right here.
Yeah, don't ever fight with a pig.
Never fight with a pig.
Fight with a pig. Yep. What's his name? Peter
Thomas.
Peter Thomas. Wow, what a lesson! It's like
you gave me this, Jim.
He said in there, right? And I give books to people who need them in certain areas. Well, that'd be a brilliant book for you. I'll go and buy it for you. How many times are you going to follow up? And he says, do you know the biggest failing in real estate is the follow up? You know how many people just go, right, that's me giving the valuation. Bye, see you later.
We spoke about this. Over the weekend. Yeah.
Just phone me when you're ready. It's like, and that's the biggest failing in sales. He actually says, people do not follow up. Follow up. It's the most important thing. Is follow up every single time. Another time as well is I was meant to do a stock takedown in Manchester for Tillis Russell. And Bernie D'Souza, who was my mentor, who was retired at 25-year-old, a millionaire, says, I'm going to be doing a mentorship at Tom's house that night on Friday. And I was meant to be going down with the team at Tillis Russell. Mm-hmm. And I went to the team at Tillis Russell, that's fine, I'll just drive down in my own car later on. And did they get bent out of shape? I wasn't doing what they wanted them to do. And it's like, wait a minute, this is out of ours, this is my time. Mm-hmm. I couldn't give a shit what you think. And this is where it came important to me. It's like, they used to talk about this all the time. And I'm not saying this for every single person. But do you know your job? How important you are in your job? This is what I used to get told. Get a glass of water, okay? And just have a glass of water filled up. Put your finger in and pull it back out. That's how important you are in your job. That's you. That's your job. Once you're gone, nobody cares. They'll just move on and get somebody else. And that's why it's important to build something on a side hustle for yourself.
Yeah.
So I actually went to Bernie's house that night and drove down all the way from there. God, I remember slapping my face, keeping myself awake. I then had to go into a lay-by somewhere and actually sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning because I was about dead. And then eventually got in there for 7 o'clock in the morning when they were all ready to start work. Thank God I never went because Alan Robertson actually the gate crashed a wedding. This is funny. This is the funny thing you always remember. The gate crashed a wedding and he got caught getting torn about bride. Thank God I wasn't there. But it's important. We've just lost our people from TikTok. So bye-bye. My phone ran out. It was another phone. Right. We're all right on Instagram. So Isle of Skye, then Bernie, and then driving down myself, my own expense. Paris with Keith Cunningham for the weekend. Birmingham constantly. Every half year, IBS, International Business Systems, used to have a function where 20 to 30,000 people filled the NEC and the NIA on different weekends, respectively, with different people. This is how big our network was. This is the people we were teaching with all these books, tapes, and functions. This was huge, this organization. We were listening to speakers like Will Carling, Sir Ranulph Fiennes, some successful coaches for the England team, for the Scotland team, in terms of rugby and stuff like that. Frank Dick, OBE. These were all speakers from the stage that we were listening to, and they were getting in for us to learn from, who had actually books to sell as well. But the most important thing was the information that they were passing on, because they knew it's what we needed. That was the most important thing. They knew we needed that. Driving up to Aberdeen as well for functions there. So this was constant for 5 years. What else lasts 5 years? A university education.
Yeah.
And yet, plugging yourself into this system would ultimately see you instantly successful. And yet there's people out there that will pay for 5 years of education with no guarantee of being successful, and actually put themselves into debt for tens of thousands of pounds. And yet some people out there won't even part 20 quid at that time, or even 50 quid for this weekend function. I mean, some of these functions are like, 200 and 300 quid now, but even the Tony Robbins ones, I really couldn't afford to go. I mean, it was like £2,000 to sit at the front. So I used to sit in the cheap seats at the back and hope that I got a ticket for nothing. If I waited long enough, so I got to bring someone with me. And I used to bring Gordon Jackson when we first started in Century 21.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to go to these, and I used to buy one, get one free sort of thing. I used to wait till last minute because we didn't have the money to do it. But I knew we didn't have the money, but that's the very reason I needed to do it, because we didn't have the money. It's like, that's what people don't get. The very fact that you've not got the money tells you that's the reason you need to do it. Or you would have the money already.
Yeah.
Newsflash. Hello, McFly. But it's investing in you and what you really need to do. And the whole thing, what I was doing over these years was to get time. I wanted to save time. I wanted to buy my time back. That's why I was doing it. So that's why it was most important to buy my time back. This is why, and as well as this, all these books, tapes, functions are for the 5-year period. This is even before I started property investment. My career started accelerating up because I had complete belief in myself. So I was going from Balfour's on 7,000, and I went to Tillis Russell within a year as a section leader up to 9,000. I then went to a section leader upgrade in Tillis Russell, and I was at Tillis Russell, I think it was on 12,000 eventually after the 5 years. And then I jumped because of all the education and what I'd learned and how I'd built my job up. I jumped from 12,000 to 24,000 in a company car as a financial controller. Just like that.
That's a big jump.
I doubled my salary in a company car. All because of what I'd learned in the system with the books, tapes, uplines, and functions, and mentors, and the people that are far more successful than me. It was the attitude that determines your altitude in life, nothing else. Mm-hmm. Your attitude will determine your altitude. Education will get you so far, but it's your attitude, and your attitude will change by the people you associate with, the books you read, and the podcasts you listen to. And this is how I managed to basically accelerate my career throughout that process. So then it was a natural progression for me then to go from VZS Technical Ceramics, then the Limbo. And at the same time as I got offered the job from VZS Technical Ceramics to Bell Security, out of the blue, before I was 30, I sat down with a guy who was interviewing me for financial controller, Lionel, right from Alba Diagnostics, and he turned around and says, "How would you like to be my financial director?" Holy shit! Talk about the laws of attraction. It's like, how on earth? It's true. This happened. The laws of attraction. I wanted to be a financial director before I was 30, desperately. And this guy just turned around after going to be a financial controller and says, "How would you like to be my financial director?" Almost a couple of weeks before my birthday, my 30th. I could not believe it. And that was the decision, because it was like financial director locally. I knew my money was in, at that time I was starting to build my property. And we'll talk about numbers next week from the very beginning now, because I'm telling you about the career. So it was the numbers I was building in my property, and I realised what's going to set me free. It's not going to be on the road. It's not going to be PLC. And the people that taught me that was John and Nancy Lear, because John Lear was one of my mentors at the time as well, when I was in international business systems. And he actually ran the Rank organisation. John Lear. Now, interestingly enough, John Lear actually wanted to get a Learjet with his money, and that's how successful they were in this business. It's like, holy shit, buy yourself a Learjet? Who does that? It's like, but that's what his ambitions were. But John actually, it resonated because John thought, I'm on the hamster wheel. And John's story was a big, big one for me. He says, all I was doing was traveling around the world. I was getting involved in everything. I never saw my family. I was always, by the time I got up in the morning, nobody was awake. I had to go to work. By the time I got home at night, everybody was in their bed, and I never saw any of my wife or anything. My family and everything was disappearing throughout this. I had to do something different, and network marketing was for him, and that's what set him free. So I realized in my property business, I had to do something different as well. And that's when I made the decision, and I told Gordon Strang that I deeply regret I'm having to, knock it back, because it's really one of the things I really wanted to be and wanted to do. Yeah. But I know my future is going to be in property, and it has to be something that will set me free. And I know I was on that journey to do that, by what I'd learned so far. So it was all that gave me the confidence. And in terms of doing what I'm doing to get that far forward. So don't be ashamed if you're like 5 years in to your journey and learning and educating yourself in property as well, and it's like you've still not got off the mark. Doesn't matter, because you've got plenty of time. Time's on your side more than anything. Because when's the best time to buy property? Now. Every single time. And in 10 years' time, I'll be saying, if I'm still here, when's the best time to buy property in 10 years' time? It's then in 10 years' time. Now. Yeah. Because the numbers always make sense if it works. That's it. Yeah. That's all it comes down to. So I took the job as financial director because it was basically in Glen Office. I was 6 miles up the road, easier, and it allowed me to then continue to build my property business, because I was building it all by myself. And we will talk about that next week and what I did and how I did it from the very beginning, from the very first property I bought. And we will bring back into some of the things I've learned here and talked about here as well. Here's the fast track to success before we finish off here, Richard. Yeah. Actually, to be honest, we're live streaming on Instagram anyways. We don't need to do an hour for that reason. Here's the fast track to success. Listen, everybody. Here's the fast track to success. How you can be successful quicker than you expect. And this is what you need to do. Envisage yourself in 10 years' time and put it very detailed. Very, very detailed. How you're going to act, what you're going to be doing, who you're going to help, where you're going to be, how much money you're going to have, all these different things. Get it right down in detail. Think about it every single day. And you know why? Because every time you think about it every single day, you will begin to act like that person as you think about it. Yeah. And they talk about fake it till you make it, but that's effectively what they're saying. And it's true. It's like if you act like, I'm not talking about to be. If you act like a millionaire, well, a millionaire doesn't go out and buy Lamborghinis and Ferraris and all the rest of it. That's what millionaires don't do that. Millionaires invest money, they make money, they build wealth. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. All the other ones are just smoke and mirrors to get you to buy their product. If you act like a millionaire or act like Warren Buffett, that's probably one of the best ones to do. Yeah. You're frugal, investing in the right things, then you will ultimately work towards that and be successful as a result of that, just because you act like that. So that's how to get where you are in the next 10 years and start now, because you'll begin to act like that, you begin to talk like that, you begin to speak to the people like that, and you need to speak to on your journey, because you know you'll need to do that to get there. That's why it's important that you write down where you are. People that write down their goals will be far more successful than people that don't. So once you've done that, you envisage it every day and you'll automatically do it. It's important that you go back into it's important as well as your partner has a winning relationship with you, Richard. Mm-hmm. The person will overrun here, and I'm happy to do that. Yeah. So, for the benefit of this, we'll end here for it to get updated on Instagram. So bye-bye to the Instagram, but we do have Instagram live anyway. So if it's still on live, I'm not really sure if it stays there on Instagram. We'll stay on Instagram live right now. But we'll stop there at the 60 minutes for the Instagram, and she'll narrow it down and upload it. But here's the next one I want to talk about. It's important that you back the winning horse in your relationship. And what I mean by that, Elaine and I spent a lot of years in turmoil with each other because we found it Elaine found it extremely difficult for me to make all the decisions and pull us forward. Because Elaine didn't think like I'm thinking. She unplugged herself from the system. She read some of the books in the beginning, she went to some of the functions, but she wasn't as driven as me. And while Elaine's a nurturer, Elaine nurtures, she's caring, she's outgoing, whereas I'm a complete introvert and I have long-term thinking. And opposites do attract in a relationship. And if you are the opposite of your partner, congratulations, you found the right person. It's when you're both exactly the same, you've got to worry. You can pull in the same direction, absolutely, but it's when you're both exactly, then you don't need the other one anyway, because you see in your partner the strength that you lack, and they see in you the strengths that they lack.
Yeah.
And that's why you're attracted to each other, the laws of attraction. But it's important to get on with a relationship with your partner, and it's more important out there as well as the person. It is not the most forthright that really wants to be the person forthright to actually back down and back the person, the winning horse. And I really mean that. There came a point in our life where I just thought, I'm just doing it. I'm not caring what you're thinking now. It's like, because I know it's the right way forward. I know it's the right thing to do. And I do remember, actually, I'll talk about it. It was one property that we bought in particular that Elaine said to me, you are not buying that property. And I went, fuck yeah, I'm buying it. But I'll tell you about it on our journey, because it was one of the early ones, because I knew that property was set. We've still got that one today. And I tell you what, it makes a ton of money, infinite returns. And it's like, for her, if I hadn't bought these, we'd be skint still. We would be still.
I know which one you're talking about. I think
we'd be on poverty row. We'd still be skint. I'd still be blooming struggling. I'd still have no money at the end of the month. Every single time if I'd listened to Elaine, because Elaine hadn't actually learned what I'd learned, and she wasn't doing continuous education. But Elaine had the foresight to back the right horse, to let me get on with it. There was times where she would tear me down, and I'll say to a lot of people out there that have got partners that are actually running out there, you may think they're bullshitting sometimes, right? But just back them, back the winning horse, because a lot of times they'll maybe fail. But I tell you what, one spectacular time they'll pull it off. And if you tear them down every single time, you're in for a life of poverty. You're probably in for a life of separation and being on your own as well. If you support your partner, irrespective of the fact that you think you're the one that should be out there, just step back and let them take the lead. That's my best advice to someone out there who have both partners at loggerheads with each other. There's always a strong one in a relationship, but there is one that will actually be the winner. And that is not necessarily the same person. And the strong one has to learn to back down to that person and actually realize that they're the money machine. They're the one that are going to generate the money. They're the natural salesman. It's not you. Because you're maybe logical. You're not prepared to do that. You hide, but you're prepared to go out there and tear other people down just to try and make you feel better about what you're doing. Back down. That's my best advice for you. This is the advice I was told.
That's quite an interesting one, that.
Yeah. It is key in a relationship that you let the right person take the lead. And sometimes that right person is not you. Look at the relationship Elaine and I had. In the beginning, when I went to college, I was the one that backed Elaine because Elaine was the one working. So I had no money. So I was the one that made the tea. I was the one that cleaned the house. I was the one that did all the ironing. And, back in the early 90s, folk just, men would laugh at that. What, you're fucking funny or something? It's like, you're a pussy. That's the type of things people would say. Yeah, and I'm like, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less at that time because I knew where I was going and what I needed to do. And the last thing I wanted to do was sit there on my arse and have Elaine come home from a hard day's work, especially at distillers on a bottling line, because you're constantly, all this stuff's coming past and you're having to bottle all the time. It's like your back's in agony, and she's coming home and I'm saying, go and put my tea on. And I've been swanning about doing a bit of studying now and again and all the rest of it, just when I feel like it. It's like, no, I couldn't do that. It's like I was doing 22 hours a week of studying at college. This is what most universities actually do, but 17, believe it or not. All the rest is study it, they have to fit in. And if you're flexible enough, you can do it. So I just used to work at maybe 12 o'clock at night when Prisoner and Cell Block H was on, the original one. I used to sit and do all my studying at 12 o'clock at night and watch Prisoner and Cell Block H on the telly in the background, and just to keep me occupied and keep me awake. These are the type of things that I did, and I backed down to Elaine, and I did all the cooking, the cleaning, the ironing, and all the rest of it in the beginning, because she had the job and she was supporting me through my process. But I knew there would come a time where it would turn and the roles would reverse. Now Elaine is the one doing all the cooking, cleaning, ironing, running about, and basically I just need to say, could you do? Now, some women out there, or some partners out there, even men, would turn around and say, if their partner says to them, could you do this, could you do that? You say, I'm not a bloody skivvy. All right. And I would say, do you want to be poor for the rest of your life? That's what I would say to them. Do you want to remain poor? Because that'll get you there quick enough. Because that person is taking the lead as the person you should be supporting. And so now Elaine is the one that supports me and does everything possible for me as well. Just like you guys, I would never be where I am without you guys. When I asked you to do something, you go and do it, don't you? You didn't. And fair enough, you're an employee and all the rest of it. But even outside hours, Richard, when I asked you to do it, and there's no surprise. And that's why you have part ownership in 5 properties now, for that very reason. Because you worked for me for nothing for almost 2 years. As a more or less an intern, which was paid by job seekers or whatever it was.
At the time.
Because I couldn't afford to pay you in the beginning. And
I was studying at the same time as well. And but I knew at the end of it, obviously the benefits that were going to come at the end of it, and we both did.
But I never gave you any promise that you'd own any of the company, did I?
No.
But I knew it was the right thing to do for me, because I wanted you to be rewarded for helping me get where I was. And that was only right to do that for me. And I felt compelled that I had to do that for you, to give you that reward for helping me to get where I am. So this is all about backing the right people and helping the right people. And even in a business, you can see how these relationships work as well. And the very fact that in a business, you have to play your part and stop getting involved in other people's shit and stop dabbling in other people's. And you tell me, I tell people off about this all the time. Like, stop getting involved in other people's stuff. It's like your job is to do that and not cog. I look at a business as like a gearbox. This is how I was taught in the books. This is how I was taught by my mentors. Your business, or what you've got, is a gearbox and an engine. The only way that engine is going to run efficiently is if you get the gears, where the people, to integrate with each other and lock in synchronization, and that gearbox will run seamlessly throughout that process. That's what you need in a business. If you don't have that, you've got conflict. And sometimes some of these people should no longer be there for that reason. They're not prepared to fit in anymore. They're not prepared to adapt. They're not prepared to change. The only constant thing in this world, the only constant and consistent thing in this world is change. It's inevitable. It's like an oxymoron. It's consistent, but it's change. It will always happen. So the only thing you have to, even in your job, I mean, when my bosses came in to me and said, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to do weekly accounts, we've got to do daily accounts, we've got to do key indicators, I was like, let's go for it. And I noticed everybody was like, let's not go for it, was all the people that stayed where they were in their job. Well, I got promoted, and everybody else that was like that and had that attitude got promoted as well. See how that attitude determined the altitude. You never got promoted because you were the favourite. You got promoted because you were a doer. And that's what happens with the laws of attraction and your income. There's a huge amount of income out there, and it's going to be the same amount of income. All you have to do is learn how to attract the income to you. The people that get the most exposure are the people that make the most money. That's really, in a nutshell, where it is. So back the right running horse.
Yeah.
Learn to take a back seat when it's necessary. That's really important. And this is what books and tapes and mentors and uplines and functions will actually tell you through this process. It may be difficult for you to take that on board because you're hearing it for the first time. Because some people will actually listen to this, watch this later on and go, aye, right, there's no way I'm going to back down to her. No way I'm going to back down to him. But I tell you what, you'll be on the rocky road to nowhere and you'll be struggling from hand to mouth the rest of your life.
Yeah.
People that make more money are just broke at a different level in a job. That's it. The people that build wealth are truly free because the wealth is what buys them the time.
Yeah.
Not the income that they make at their job. It's the wealth. They have the choice to do what they want to do when they want to do it because they have the money to do it. Why do you think I'm sitting in Spain? Why do you think a week ago I was in Jamaica? Because of that. Now, Richard, this is the first time ever that I've actually chosen to do this. I've never done this in my life. I've worked for the last, since I was 25, so that's 30 years constantly at this, driving forward to get to a point where I'd actually buy my time back. We're effectively time lords. This is what you want to become. You want to become a property time lord. By the way, that's my copyright. Nobody else.
I know.
If I wasn't it, I'm not wanting you having a time lord program and all the property investors are time lords. It's my gig, time lords. That's the key here. It's buying your time back. It's the right program. Now, other things I went on as well, I actually learned from my failures. Let's talk about my failures because I really want to get onto the property and the numbers next week. Yeah. My failures. Graduate Enterprise Programme was an enterprise programme set up by the government, the Scottish Government. And it was allow you to go to a week immersion with other people that were accepted to the course. You had to be accepted. You know, you didn't get in this for nothing. So they did a milk round all the colleges, and they selected certain candidates based on who they thought would be able to bring something to the table and actually be a success at something. That's actually when I met Michael Forsyth, you know, the Conservative MP. He was the Minister for Business at that time. That was my first introduction to meeting somebody in politics, Michael Forsyth, when he came along and got his photo taken with me. Sadly, I don't have that photo anymore, but Michael Forsyth was actually a huge inspiration at the time because he was all about business and pushing things forward. And he was a big pioneer in that area as a politician, and also a big champion of Richard Branson at that time as well. And he still is. So he's now Lord Forsyth, actually. So the Graduate Enterprise Programme was one, and I did a business plan, and the business plan was to have Fife Employment Gazette. So at the time there was no papers or anything like that. You know, I noticed that all the papers everybody went to the papers for jobs, adverts, and East Fife Mail and stuff like that. And I thought to myself, I wonder if you bring all these jobs into one paper and actually just produced it like that. This is before the internet. So that's what I did. I produced a mock-up. I went round to everybody. I learned a lot of things. I met business leaders. I met businesses. I met councils. I met people from managers and directors and all the rest of it. It gave me a real good insight into cold selling. I stood in the Mercat and did, you know, like statistical, you know, questionnaires and stuff like that. You know, if you were looking for a job, where would you go and all the rest of it. So this taught you how to do all this and put a business plan and a model together and everything like that. Now, to be honest, it was a complete failure, but it just so happened the Employment Gazette came out 6 months later for the UK, which was a huge success, which went on to become Read online. Yeah. You know what? I just didn't think big enough. It never got off the ground because there was not enough people really to sustain something like that in a full publication just in Fife. But I just didn't think big enough. But it taught me a huge amount of valuable lessons about I didn't think big enough. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. And it taught me how to build a business plan. It taught me how I should be thinking. It taught me how to do sales, which I had no experience in. It got me involved with other people of the same mindset, entrepreneurs, and what they were doing. Patisserie Florentine or Cafe Andaluz was actually one of them, which is actually in Edinburgh.
Kathy Andalus, yeah.
Yeah, 30 years ago. This was I can't even remember her name, but she was on the Graduate Enterprise Programme as well, and other people as well. At the time, there was AIDS, so one of Robbie, she had actually come up with Froggy's condoms. A whole, and I thought, God, you've got this nailed. At the same time as Mates came out, but I mean, Froggy's condoms could have done it because jump your partner, Froggy's condoms.
Okay.
Yeah, and she had it all nailed, but she didn't do the right market and all the rest of it, and it could have been a really successful business enterprise with Froggy's condoms. So that's the sort of people I was with, but it failed miserably, and you could call it a failure because it never actually got off the ground. But it taught me a huge amount of business lessons.
I was going to say, although maybe it failed, you learn a lot.
But see how it's a lesson or a blessing.
Yeah.
I even did a wholesale paper. So I actually did a model for buying direct from the merchants and actually selling and cutting out the shops for actual paper when I worked at Tillis Russell. I actually built a whole business plan, a whole model, spoke to the wholesale, the merchants to actually hold all the paper and actually worked out a form, a system so I could actually take it from the merchants and sell it right to the consumer before the internet on mail order. Where could that have been now? That was the start of Amazon.
I was just going to say.
Didn't think big enough, but see how these sort of things,
these concepts,
but they taught me a huge amount of lessons. So, and then it also taught me about doing what it takes every time, but only to never start. But the key here is to start. You don't, and I'll finish off here. This is really, each time I was doing this was about building belief in myself and getting comfortable, but not too comfortable, just keeping that wee bit uncomfortableness, because you have to be uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable doing what you're doing, you're not learning anything, you're not growing, you're not actually getting any better at what you're doing. So you'll stay where you are right now. So this is about getting me comfortable with selling and what I needed to do. And each time I was doing it, I was building more and more belief in myself, because I was going around all these business owners and I'm going, yeah, I'll buy into that. The council said, if you could, I'll advertise in your employment gazette, and I'll give you a big budget, but you need to reach an Asian lesbian. If you could guarantee you could reach an Asian lesbian demographic, I'll advertise in your paper straight away. I'm like, what? That's what he told me at the time. I was like, am I hearing this right? Because he says I could reach every other demographic, but he says if you could now there's no internet, so he says if you can guarantee me that's the sort of person I can hit. And I was like, I've no idea how to get that person or where to find that. But I tell you what, I'll do some research. And I actually went away and did some research, and it's like, nah, there's too limited market for that. But he would have actually spent thousands with me every single month to do that from the council if that was a demographic. So again, that's another way forward to the internet. I wish, well, I don't wish, because I wouldn't be where I was if the internet had appeared first. Probably that's a blessing in disguise.
I think it's important that you wouldn't change your journey because you're happy where you are or where you're going now. If things had been different, would your path be the same? Do you know what it's like? So
absolutely. So that's what it is. Mark actually mentions there, and one gear breaks down, it all fails. Absolutely. Mark's actually talking on Instagram about that now. And he's, absolutely, Mark. If one gear breaks down in this whole system, then you have to learn to make sure you can replace it or repair it. That's key. So I think we could maybe finish off there, Richard.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's given everybody an insight. And let's talk numbers next week. Let's talk about the journey. How I bought my first property, what happened with my first property, I've even still got my first property after all these years. And I tell you what, when you realise how much money I've made out of that property over the years, it's like, my God, if this doesn't tell you property investment is the best thing ever, nothing else will. Because you'll be sitting doing what I did in 30 years' time and talking about it, and you'll be in exactly the same position as I was when I first started, talking about it now and thinking, wow, I have made a lot of money on that property. Incidentally, I've put a lot of money into that property as well. You know that, anyway.
Yeah, I know.
So I think that's time. We could finish off there, and hopefully everybody got that on Instagram. If you get a chance, share it and all the rest of it. Thanks very much, Mark. I appreciate that. You actually comment on it and actually joining us on there as well. Unfortunately, TikTok ran out. It's like my phone ran out. I'll remember next week for the people on TikTok. But they got enough. They got about an hour in.
But that was a really good run through that part of your journey, Jim, and through the people that have influenced you and through your career and things. And I think everybody will be keen to hear about the start of the figures and property side of it next week. So that'll be an interesting show to get your insights on that. Thanks to everybody who's been commenting and watching. There's a few comments there we've overrun today, so if there's a few there that we've missed, we'll come back and go over them. And you could join us next Monday, 12:30, for the 5th instalment, Jim, of the Diary of a Property Investor.
I like what Jock said, actually. I like what Jock said. Absolutely, Linda. And Mick, thanks very much for taking part as well. And Jock says it all. Jock has raised over £2 million for charity. Jock's got an OBE. And it's like, I interviewed him on my Sunday slot at one time, and I tell you what, he's an amazing guy. But he keeps it real every single time. His feet are firmly on the ground. He's a grafter, and that's what I love so much about Jock. And I could genuinely listen to that guy all day, every day for the rest of my life, because he's got so much wealth of knowledge and experience and expertise in what he does. For somebody to have the tenacity to be able to raise over 2 million for charity that's brilliant. What does that guy know? What does that guy know? What could that guy tell you?
What could you learn
from him? That's the type of people, everyday people. Jock will say himself, that's everyday people when you think about it. Just everyday people out there in our communities actually have all that knowledge and wealth of experience about how to succeed in anything, and that same skill set that he's got can be applied to anything right across the world, right across at any time. That same skill set, he's got the fundamentals for being successful in anything you ever do. And thank you very much, Jock, for taking part in this. And bye-bye. I'll end off here.
Stop, Jock. No, that was really good. Thanks, everybody.
He's a first-class guy.
Yeah, right. That's great, guys. We're going to finish there. See you later. Bye.